Welcome to the Pain-Free Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Dana Jones. I am a certified personal trainer, and I'm here to help you achieve your fitness goals without pain. In each episode, I'll share tips and strategies that will help you stay safe and pain-free while you're working out. I'll also interview experts in the field of fitness and pain management. So if you're ready to learn how to stay active and pain-free, then subscribe to the Pain-Free Athlete Podcast today. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Pain-Free Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Dana Jones, and today's guest is Reanna Karp. She is a mental performance coach for elite female basketball players with a master's degree in sport and performance psychology and years as a college and semi-pro player. Reanna fuses her on-court experience with over a decade of mental health work. Known for her holistic, human-first approach, she empowers athletes to build self-worth, confidence, and resilience using visualization, breathwork, and thought training. Welcome to the show, Reanna. How are you?
Thank you. I'm so good. Thank you for having me. How are you?
Good. Trying to get through it. All right. So I talked about you. Now it's time for you to talk about you. Like, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, that was an awesome intro. Thank you so much. And again, thank you for having me. Yeah, so I do work with athletes, performers on so many different levels. I do tend to specifically work with basketball players, female basketball players the most, just because I have that background. But even right now, currently, I have athletes in track and field. I have athletes in flag football. I've had athletes in soccer. So definitely just, I love that aspect of performance overall. I think that's something that is what I'm most passionate about, really. And underneath the performance for me is really building confidence. I very much like saying in that holistic view, I really like to take the person first approach where if we can build from that inside and like really build that true self-worth identity, getting out on the court or the field isn't so much pressure anymore because there's nothing really to prove as much as there is just to play.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I'm starting to see the trend now where it is that human first approach, which is nice because athletes need to be like considered human instead of these performance pieces.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Where do you feel like you've seen that, or like in what context do you feel like that's coming up and what you can see?
Well, I mean, one, that there's more coaches like you that are out there that are working with people and it's being talked about, which is always, I mean, that's kind of the reason why you're here is because of the fact that I was looking for people to kind of reinforce that idea of what's going on now is that an athlete as an emotional being is important and we have to recognize that because if we don't, then you're starting to see those issues that pop up where you have chronic pain. And like I've said, like me as an athlete, like I suffered from migraines for years as a result of not wanting to let people know I was nervous, even though it was totally appropriate for me to be nervous. Or even when I made a mistake, like I felt like it was life or death mistake just because of the fact that it felt that way
Yeah,
because there
yeah.
was no healthy outlet for that. And if I had somebody like you, then maybe there could have been a conversation. And instead of me continuing to build these walls of resistance to feeling anything because I felt like I needed to be cold to perform well, like I don't know, who knows what kind of athlete I would have been if I had
Right.
somebody like you.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think you're spot on in so many aspects, right? It's not only like that safe space to talk about it, like you said, but even having the right communication words and how to express our emotions. Like that was one of the reasons I started getting into this too, just even in the notion of emotions and how to express them, because I don't remember any class I had ever taken that was like, here, this is what's happening as you feel something, and this is how you express that emotion, right? That even with you, you're saying of like the way that it impacted you on that mental emotional level. Imagine what also could have happened on that physical level if there was that open space for you to be able to communicate in the right ways with the right people to then open those doors for you. But I also think you bring a good point to just sports culture in general, which I love. I loved my athlete experience, and I love that I get to love athletics. And the culture can be really harsh, and in a lot of ways in the psychology aspect of it, there are areas where critique is needed, and taking that human first approach of like, let's really just acknowledge you and what you're going through before we put you into these boxes of injured, okay, not good enough, quote unquote, for those who like can't see it, right? Like it's so intense. And to the psyche of the athlete, then they're like, well, I don't want to be kicked off, or I don't want to not start. I don't want to take time off, which obviously is not only short term impacting, but long term.
It's funny because last night, I don't know if you've ever watched that show, The Biggest Loser, when it was on,
Mm-hmm.
and it was granted, it was a horrible show, but of course, millions of us all tuned in because we wanted to watch these people, um, do what they were doing. It was inspiring, maybe? I mean, it was also
I hear
like
you
they
where
were
you're coming from.
they were
I
doing
hear where
things,
you're
I
coming
mean,
from.
body image and all that kinda stuff was kinda crazy. Anyway, so I've only watched 2 out of the 3 episodes of the little exposé of it, and, Dr. Huizenga is on, and he used to be a team doctor for the Raiders, and I think he taught at UCLA or one of the Southern California schools, and one of the things that he talked about was the reason why he got hired by the Raiders is because he needed to understand what the bottom line was. And the bottom line was that if an athlete was injured but not injured enough, they could go back in the game.
Hmm.
And that's kind of what he got hired for as well on the show was that yes, you have this situation where their ankles may be sore because, this person weighs 400 pounds or whatever it may be, but we kind of need you just to give them a little tape and call it a day and then push them back out there. And of course, he has like huge regret and, but it's funny, he didn't have regret for the football side of it. But,
Mm.
but he had regret for the show side of it, like was even emotional. And because I think when you're dealing with weight gain and such, it's never just about the weight. Right,
Right.
somebody who's
Right.
is heavy, I mean, yes, there are people that are biologically prone to becoming heavier, and I won't deny that. But I would say probably about 85% of the people have some kind of psychological trauma that they're trying to mask. And he was getting those responses, and so he was in this very awkward position of not wanting to break confidentiality and talk about the person's trauma unless they were willing to share about it. But on the other piece, like
Hmm.
trying to have 'cause he had a lady with rhabdo, and
Hmm.
they're like, "She needs to get back in there," and for those of you who don't know, rhabdo you could die from it. It's your muscles essentially just melting, eating themselves, and you can pass
Hmm.
away because remember your heart's a muscle and all this other stuff, and they were like, "She's fine, put her back in, let her work out and whatever," and it created this unnecessary drama. The main point is that going back to him as a doctor of athletes is that, yes, you're hurt, but we still need you. And it really perpetuating that mentality that you have no pain, no gain. You have to fight
Yeah.
through it. And what I'm seeing now is a little bit of a turn on that trend is that athletes are concerned that, football players are concerned they're going to get CTE and that they're
Right.
not going to be able to recognize their families or they're going to do something horrible like kill themselves or maybe. Now,
Yeah.
are
No.
you
Yeah.
seeing that shift?
Yeah, and also, I mean, great story, great points on so many levels. I want to say the shift has something to do like on this bigger spectrum of maybe just humans having just the slightest bit more of emotional awareness and self-awareness, right? I think one point that you said that I think is making the shift happen is part of that culture of no pain, no gain, or hey, I know you're really hurt, but we need you anyways. It enforces us to not be in touch with our bodies. And that's why I think I also take this person first approach because once sport is over at whatever age, whether you're done after middle school, high school, college, pro, whatever it is, eventually you have to be quote unquote just human again, right? And a big part of, I think, this human experience is being in touch with oneself and one's emotions and intuition and all these different aspects where there's a time and place to push through the pain and there's a time and place to be able to, let's call it muster up and get back in there. And the time and place to be in touch with your intuition and your truth and what's actually happening within you, even when coaches and doctors and all these players or people, parents might be screaming something else. You always have that tiny little whisper in your head. And the culture as of before was teaching us to ignore those whispers. And I think this shift is for whatever beautiful reason that we are becoming more self-aware as a culture. I could hope like on a mass level, even in schools, I know there's a lot of different types of schools popping up that are specifically towards resilience and coping skills and all of these great things. And in just more of a this kind of direction of awareness. So I guess yes, long answer to your question is I do think that there's a shift. I just think it's, we're just starting like a domino. We're starting some momentum.
How are you when you clients come to you, they already know what they're getting, right? Like, you're not getting people that you have to and I know this sounds weird, but, like,
No, no.
convert into the mind body thinking?
No, yeah, for the most part, everyone's in. They're pretty hungry to like they'll come to me usually, especially with the olders. They'll be like, "Oh, I have this mental block and I need to see it differently," or I'm feeling like this and I can't shake it. I think the biggest maybe hurdle I would have is with some of the younger kiddos who are just kind of learning. But you know what's crazy is even with them, they shock me. I mean, I shouldn't even have said that because they absolutely shock me. Like even though they might come in a little bit more far and my language might be presenting a little different with them, they're incredibly self-aware. Like boys and girls will come in with an incredible level of self-awareness that I also think is part of this shift that's happening. Is just we're becoming it more as this generation, so it's getting passed down.
Which is great because I didn't have that.
Right. Right.
And even, like, coaches, when they came at us hard, it's like, "Why," like, the famous line that everybody always calls, is like, "Why are you crying?" "This is baseball, there's no crying in baseball." But there are situations that, and the thing is that crying doesn't have to be something negative, right? You could cry from joy, do whatever it is. I mean, just that release, that endorphin release is needed sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. When I have an athlete come to me and say, "Well, I didn't wanna cry," or "I didn't wanna" listen, I get maybe sometimes crying can kinda distract you for a second, but I always come back with, crying was our very, 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 very first sign that we are alive. From the moment that we came out of the womb, the only way that they really knew we were, like, healthy, ready, good to go was that belt of a cry. That, like, why is it that we live in a society that has taught us anything else?
Well, they were starving to death and whatever, and they
Mm,
didn't want to appear
that's right.
weak.
That whole thing.
Yeah,
No, I hear you though.
all
I
those
hear
old
you. I
people.
mean, imagine if you had the other experience that you went through when you were going through all of it to be able to really be as authentic and vulnerable and real about what was going on with you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, it would have completely changed the athlete that I was because of the fact, and a lot of it was like, I just put it on myself, right? There was nobody, I mean, there was some indicators from coaches. I mean, my parents really didn't give me too much feedback on what type of person I needed to be, but I just decided that
Mm.
I was going to be like that stoic person. And, it's you can't really be stoic, right? Because there's times that you're totally jacked, If I throw somebody out at first base or whatever, I was like totally jazzed. And you should like celebrate that. It shouldn't be like, oh, that's just another day. But a lot of times I felt like, oh, that's just another day. Like I can't really show it. And I believe that's what led me to eventually being a chronic pain sufferer because it was a goal to be outside of my body.
Mm.
And, of course, as an athlete, you shouldn't be outside of your body. You need to be in your body for you to be able to perform well, but so there was a conflicting kind of behavior that was going. I was just like a walking dichotomy. It was really annoying.
That is so interesting. I like already want to like jump into 10 questions about you and be like, well, let's talk about the like stoic. Let's see where that comes from. Like I'm so ready to like dive in and be like,
Yeah.
like let's see where that was and where we could have made the shift. But no, it's just even you having that awareness though, right? Of like if this looked different, and of course you can't necessarily go back, but it still gives you some really beautiful gems as you go forward in whatever adversities you have, right? And again, that's why I think mindset training specifically for athletes is really for anyone. Like truthfully, like any of us can use these are just really human skills. Like
Now, aside from language, is there anything that you do differently with because, you're dealing with who's your youngest client?
currently 11.
Okay, so you're dealing with an 11-year-old up to semi-pro athlete. So like, is it same language or is it, I mean, obviously it's going to be age appropriate because you're not going to use like master
Sure.
degree terms with an 11-year-old. But, do you do different activities to try to, I guess one of the things that I'm working on with school with our students is implementing fun.
Uh-huh.
And really introducing that fun is essential and that it's something that they need to practice because somewhere along the line we were kind of pushed into this you need to once you get to high school, you need to be an adult and you need to know what you're gonna do for the rest of your life, and there is no fun to be had, and that's why they do, like, weird crap offline kinda deal because it's not appropriate for them to be goofy. They have to be mini adults, and so they don't understand the concept of fun. How do you keep that with your athletes? How do
Mhm.
you, make sure that they hold on to the fun factor?
I love that you asked that question because I think it speaks to what you were just saying about your pattern of like being more stoic. Where I'm like, I wonder why in high school for you, there was a shift of like, let me not do this for fun anymore. Let me not celebrate that catch or that, like things like that. That I think it's just cool that you asked that question yourself. Again, seeing how important that element of fun and celebration really still is. Yeah, I definitely implement it, and it looks different for different age groups. Developmentally, like on a cognitive level, but also just what the athlete needs and where they're at. If an athlete's coming to me with low confidence, there's a really good chance that they're not having fun anymore. And so, on a very basic level, we're going to start having fun. I mean, like, we're really going to implement, like, instead of you writing down certain reflections you're going to have on how many shots you made, like, I'm going to have you write down how many times you laughed either during a water break or before practice. Like, we're really just going to break it down into the simple because there's not one sport that you start as either a 5-year-old, 10-year-old, however old you are, to go say, "I'm gonna go outside right now and work soccer. I'm gonna go outside right now and get serious." Like, you always say, "I'm gonna go play. I'm gonna go outside and play right now." And when I bring that up or I will ask my athletes, even with an 11-year-old, like, because if an 11-year-old's coming to me, they're probably at least like a intermediate skill level and have been playing for at least 2 or 3 years, I'll ask them, like, "Why did you start playing?" And they say, "Oh, I've been playing since I was 5 years old, and I just love it with my big brother and sister." And I'll just say, "Go outside and play. Like, just put your headphones on and do your thing." Same with the older, if I have a 22, 23-year-old and they're at the maybe end of their college career or starting at the next level or getting ready to, and there's that extra level of performance anxiety, we'll take it back to play for her. And when I say that, it's like that little girl who fell in love with the game.
And that's a big one, like, acknowledging the origins of the sport. And I was having a conversation with somebody this weekend, and we are talking about the specificity in which kids have to have now that parents, and it could be financial. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons why parents are saying whatever. But at 5, I'm gonna be a soccer player and not trying anything else or doing anything else, and then
Mm.
putting this immense amount of pressure on themselves, and then by the time they're about 15, 16, they get tapped out.
Yeah, they
And they're
burn
like,
out.
"I'm done. I did
Yeah,
this seriously and I'm out," kinda thing.
that is a whole other conversation. That yes, we could absolutely deep dive. Like there's right there's I want to be an advocate for that level of commitment, and I think they say up until about like, and I could be wrong, I'd have to revisit the research, but up until like age 11, 12, they're really there. That's all time for I'm like thinking of maybe the outliers who are just absolute savants and they come out at 5 years old being able to shoot threes more consistently than Steph Curry. Like, okay, like cool. And there's a time and place. There's a time and place for the seriousness. Like that's a very delicate age for that level of commitment. But I'm not here to right or wrong any parent. And I know that's what you were saying either at all. It's just it's a big commitment for that age group.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
I know, and I think it's my algorithm sometimes. So I'm getting, like, all these little dudes that are hitting baseballs, and, like, I had one where dad was, like, throwing a red ball and a blue ball, and he's like, "Hit the red one," doing whatever, and the kid was probably, like, 4. And in one aspect, you're like, "Wow, that's super cool. Look at this little dude being able to have the intelligence or vision to be able to do this." And on the other end, you're like, "All right, dad, you're putting this video on TikTok, like, you know, are you keeping it real for because that's the other aspect of it that people forget is that attention spans vary, right? And when you're dealing with somebody who, so there's a reason why your 5 and 6-year-old that's playing soccer or like running around and chasing each other, or they're picking flowers or doing whatever. The game is probably too long, and they're not gonna hang on, and that's just the way it is. But as they get older, sure, then you can increase the time of play and do that. But it's kinda interesting because, like I said, there's a curiosity. that we see with these athletes that are talented, thinking about like Charlie Woods and a lot of the kids that are coming up that are their parents have been playing. Like I know Deion Sanders has taken on a bunch of old football players' kids at Colorado. And I think there's that fan that wants to see the same level of play from the person's kid. And I can't even imagine the pressure that that poor kid is feeling having the last name of somebody who is amazing.
Right. Right.
And then there's also that aspect of where how you want them to just also enjoy. Like we look at, and I'll give you a better example, Bo Jackson, extremely, extremely talented, hated being in public. Really just did like he was
Great. Yeah.
great and he did what he needed to do, but like didn't want anything to do with it. And he's an insane archer.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
is incredible and wants nothing to do with baseball or football, does not want like, doesn't do fan days, doesn't do any of that stuff, doesn't
It's a
show up
great
for
point.
anything.
It's a great point.
He just got, too much, and I don't know if that was his personality type or just the pressure of being amazing.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think about even your really take with all of this as this pain-free athlete going through that, like those big names or those kids who have been in it for that long doing the same movement over and over again. Some bodies obviously, like you said, genetically, they're maybe be a little bit more suitable for that. And what happens to a lot of those athletes at 15, 16 when their body's done the same thing for 10 years at that high level? Like, but maybe that also can be like in a good way. The society is coming up with more recovery and practices and stuff. But I think that's where also this avenue can open up and just allow for a safe space for that athlete to say, hey, like, I don't know how to ask, but I need a break. Or like, I don't know. And I'd love your perspective even on stuff like that too. And that more physical pain aspect of things or things that can come up like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's what took him out, right? Bo's like he had the hip pointer, which is whatever, kind of different, and then all of a sudden he had to have his hip replaced at whatever 30 years old or however old he was, which is kind of insane. But he also took a tremendous amount of punishment, and who knows? But I don't, got to give him credit. He got out when he could. And he did it his way. And there's really no, because of course, on the other end, we see people that go too far, right? And are done, and you could tell they're done, and everybody knows they're done, but they're still trying. And it's like,
Totally.
my whole thing is that pain a lot of times spoke for me when I couldn't. And when I wanted to set a boundary, but I was unable to set a boundary, it was much easier to go, I have a headache.
Ah.
And I'm
Mhm.
sure a lot of coaches know that, right? When you see a kid and they're like, "No, my stomach's not okay," or something like that, it's like there's probably a deeper issue. If it's a kid that performs all the time and they have no this may be a thing, so, all right, maybe they ate something bad and their stomach is bothering them.
Sure.
But especially with littles, if you're seeing stomach issues, a lot of times those are indicators of stress. And those are the things like you really need to kind of, are you playing for yourself? Or are you playing for your mom or your dad or trying to compete with your brother or whatever kind of stuff? And that's how it
Yeah.
manifests. And I was 8 when I remember getting migraines, and it was because I was playing basketball and I sucked and I didn't want to do it, but I didn't
Yeah.
know how to say no. So there
Right.
was an
Yeah.
expectation for me to play, money was involved, so I had to somebody was paying for it, so you can't just quit. You don't wanna be a quitter. So there was a lot of expectation for me to be better, and, I don't know, I probably could have been a better basketball player if I actually enjoyed it, but I hated it.
There's no point then. Who cares what you how the skill would have formed if you didn't like it? That makes no sense. That makes no
Right.
sense. And what you brought up is honestly a huge part of my practice that for a while I shied away from, to be like very transparent in the term, like using the term manifest or even the things that are coming up in the mind body. And I really take a framework that like the word emotions, if you break it down, right, it's like emotions as an energy in motion. And so I take this approach really of like in this example that you just used, even there's a quote, and forgive me to the person who said it because I really don't remember who it is, nor might I get this verbatim, but he says, the tears that don't come from the eyes, the organs will weep. And essentially, it's exactly what you're saying, right? It's like when we ignore those emotions that we so deeply want to express, but don't know how or don't feel safe to, the body is going to, like you said, get the attention of whatever needs to happen. So in that phrase of like manifesting in the body is very I think I used to shy away from it because there's a lot of like current woo woo around it, if you will. But
Right.
there's all at this point, I'm like out of the woo woo closet because there's just way too much scientific evidence to show exactly what you're talking about. And when we can meet ourselves in our truth and have the space and have the opportunity to really express those things, I mean, it's just such a different experience.
So you have an athlete come to you, I don't know, say they're a high schooler, and they may have language around like every time, "Oh, I'm so stupid, I missed this," and, do whatever. So it's clear like there's some self-esteem stuff, and then, of course, usually there comes an injury, right? Like, "Oh, I have a cramp," or, whatever, right? Because, so how even if I love the sport, like, what is your approach in terms of connecting with me like, what are your basic building blocks, I guess, for self-esteem?
In that particular situation, I think my first go would really like over those few first weeks would really just to build a reputation. Like I just really want to get to know you and what even got you into whatever sport and what your life is like and what your friends are like. Like I just want you to know that this is a space where you have somebody in your corner no matter what. Because like I'm not your parent or your coach or whoever might be pressuring you in whatever way, even if it's yourself. Like I have no bias to whether you perform at the highest level or not. Like, do I want you to perform well? Absolutely. But you performing well to me really means that you're feeling good and excited and with joy in what you do every day. So yeah, my first approach is really just to create a safe space where you know that you're going to come into me at any time and there's never going to be judgment for whatever you say, for whatever's going on, because the more I think that we can be vulnerable in our truth, the truth will continue to come out, if that makes sense, right? It's
Yeah.
like if you can continue to just be yourself, the answer will reveal itself. We just don't always have the space to go and be that or do that.
Well, and you're also, I mean, when you're dealing with somebody, especially in that teenage realm, you're dealing with a lot of hormonal changes.
Mhm.
So you're having to navigate, like, I'm happy, and then I'm super pissed off, and then I'm crying, and then I'm freaking out, and then I'm good, and, whatever. So,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
how do you ride the hormonal wave of the
It's so
preteen and
funny you said that. I had a client a couple months ago who came in and she had been struggling here and there, but she came in, like, finally was like, "I think this is it for me. I'm gonna quit. I'm not doing this anymore." I was like, "Okay, like, let's talk about it." We had our whole session and, she even left kind of feeling like, "Well, I don't feel as, maybe as intense, but I still feel like this is really the right decision for me." And I mean, she came back the next week like, "I'm so excited. I changed all of my thoughts around everything that I was thinking." And of course, I still, keep an open eye of like, well, let's just like make sure that, whatever was coming up isn't just hearsay or just hormones or this or that. I think it would be circumstantial, right? Like if it is one of these things where I'm seeing some up and downs, or maybe I'm seeing something deeper that could be going on, that there's that feeling to even want to quit or whatever's coming up, right? Like is there issues with coaches or teammates or that that's maybe in playing in that they don't know how to consciously really like equate it to versus something that maybe is more serious? It just would be kind of circumstantial on how I would support next steps and how fast we go through that and all those things.
have coaches changed? Like, are they okay knowing their athletes are having coaches, like, performance coaches, or are they like, "Ugh, you don't need that hippy dippy shit?"
Can I say it's just
Okay, well, that's better than when I was a kid. So, yes, that's 50/50 is an improvement, I like that.
yes, you're right. Totally an improvement. I think I still hesitate because there's like this one more domino that needs to happen where now I think there are a better amount of coaches being open, but the gap is that they haven't made the system funded for the gap to be filled. And so they're like, "Yeah, this sounds awesome. We totally need this. And sorry, like we don't have any resources for this." Which I can't blame them for because the system wasn't made for that until this point. But now that it's not only becoming, I think, like it's not just an extra thing that you have. It's gonna only continue to become a necessity. The system has to change.
Right. Okay. Well, which is fine. I mean, I see that in the school end too, because during COVID, we realized because we asked the students what they needed, and across the United States and Europe, everywhere. We need mental health services. And so there was this influx of mental health services. Now COVID's over and they pulled
Right.
back all the services and the kids are like, I'm still me. I still need that type of support. And we're like, how nice for you. Now you have to wait or, there's only so much. I mean, mental health services are not easily available. And I don't know if it's a consideration on a lot of levels. I think it's an afterthought. Or you need to be so scary mental health wise, then that's
Right.
when we intervene, right? We need to come up with a plan or something like that.
You got me, like, I'm like, yes, all part of the system again because it's like, yeah, that whole group, I mean, missed out on years of communication skills and isolation and so much that yeah, I mean, but that also could be in my, like, optimistic thinking part of this, hopefully, system shift where it's not just, um, it's not just services for when things do hit the fan. It's preventative. It's let me come in for season and teach you guys how to cope throughout the season so that by mid-season, there isn't that complete burnout. All my grades are dropped. I don't want to do this anymore. The downfall, right? Like there has to be the shift. A girl
I would
can
love that. I
dream.
mean, that would make sense. And even, I mean, I tried to do things when I coached where I taught my athletes breath work. We had different things like intentions for the beginning of practice. They didn't know what they were, but I was just like, as you're running around, think about this.
Sure. Planting those seeds.
Yeah, just
Planting those
trying to get
seeds.
it out there because when I was doing it, which was probably 2003-ish is when I was coaching, that stuff nobody really knew about any of that stuff. And so I was again just trying to put it out there just because I was watching certain athletes flail and a lot of them because with softball, especially because they start at whatever Bobby Sox or, so they're 5 and 6 years old when they start playing softball. And again, 10 years after hardcore softball, travel ball, all the things, we're seeing these athletes who are burned out because of the fact that there really are no more seasons.
Mm,
Basketball used to be played in the winter.
you're right. You're totally right.
And now, no, you're playing basketball all year long because now you have different tournaments, you have 3-on-3s, you have this. So there's
Yeah.
no break for people. Everybody is just going off and playing the whole time. And it's almost like force funneling these children into making a decision where, like, I
Yeah.
remember this girl that I played against, she was a three-sport athlete. She played volleyball and Division III. So she played volleyball, she played basketball, and she played softball. And she
Wow.
was national player on all 3 levels because she was just amazing, and I don't know if you could do that anymore because everything overlaps. I mean, football starts they have spring ball now. So if you're playing football, you're not playing another sport because of the fact that it starts in April.
You know what that makes me curious about though, and I'd love your thoughts on is giving this example you just used of her being still like three sport athlete and let's call it top of each team. I wonder if that was to her benefit, not only mentally, but physically. Like, because you're right now, there is year round of almost every sport because I think the competition is so intense and scholarships and all these things that make it so pressuresome to quote unquote maybe keep up with the rest of everybody else. But I'm almost curious looking at it from both a physical and psychological perspective if her having those breaks, if you will, or building different muscles and having mental gaps in between and different social life, like I could see benefits to both, but I'd love your thoughts on that too.
Well, she had fun. I mean, well, it
Mm,
also didn't hurt that she was flipping amazing. I mean,
sure, sure.
we went out one time there was a golf course in New Jersey. It was like a hitting range that you could hit into a lake. And she would stand there and she'd point to signs. So she'd be like, oh, 150 yards. And then it was dark out
Wow.
and you can hear her ping. She'd hit the sign. And then she like 200 yards because she was an outstanding athlete. It didn't
Wow.
matter what she did. If there was a ball involved, she had the most insane hand-eye
That's cool.
coordination of any, but she always had fun. Like, there was always that enjoyment and, I kinda jealous because I never felt that. Like, I never really
Mm,
felt that fun
yeah.
too much when I played, and I don't know if a lot of people did, and again, I don't know if she was having fun because she was so good, like, if she sucked, would she have fun?
But it's a
It's
reciprocal
chicken or egg,
relationship.
right?
it's completely a reciprocal relationship, right? Because if I know that I'm just gonna go out and have fun, I don't have that kind of pressure on me. And then when it comes to manifesting or really even just like using the power of the mind, if I'm that confident, in a very humble way, I'm just like, yeah, like I'm gonna hit that sign right there. The way that the brain works, I mean, if you train it in the right way physically enough, and then having that level of confidence and fun and no pressure or attachment to it, the body's gonna do what you tell the mind to do.
Right.
That it's
And she had
almost
it
like you
dialed in.
I mean, it kinda sounds like flow state to me, like, it sounds what is possible.
It was amazing to watch, like,
That's cool.
basketball watching, amazing to watch, just absolutely just dialed in. And again, I think it was making those shifts. It
Mm,
was that ability to say, "Okay, basketball's over now. Now I'm gonna do this." And again, the seasons didn't really leak a little bit. If you have championship, that may cut off the beginning of your training for the next season. But there was definitely a clear line between the different seasons, even in college, and now there is none. Like I said, it's if you're doing it, you're traveling with tournaments, and I was laughing the other day, I was on Facebook, and parents like, "If you're swinging a car payment and your season is 7 games and it's a mortgage payment and whatever, you better be serious about it." And it's like, "Well, damn, if you're dropping 5, 6 grand for your child to play in 3 or 4 tournaments over the summer or something like that, that's crazy." And I understand as a parent why you want your child to be serious, but on the other end, that mentality is also there's a lot of pressure for that athlete to know that. Especially if you're somebody like I didn't grow up with a lot of money, so it did feel stressful trying to make a
yeah.
decision whether or not I was going to attend a tournament or something like
Yeah, that's
that.
tough. That's tough. Yeah, the other side of that too is, like, does the kiddo even understand the concept of money? Like, I feel like at that age, if my parents were to have said that to me, I would have been like, "Yeah, yeah, I totally commit. I promise I commit," and would have no idea the actual value of the difference between $500 to 5K, like, absolutely no idea. But either way, I feel like your client is like that sort of pressure is a whole another conversation.
Yeah. Parents and athletes are always interesting. I had a girlfriend that was out doing tryouts last week or this yesterday, and she said there was a dad that was, like, unhinged at his 11-year-old. It's like,
That's so sad.
they're 11, but they're playing softball now, it's August. Like, kids are starting school, like, but
Uh-huh.
again, you're playing all year round, like, literally, there's no time off, maybe January. It's almost like NASCAR racing schedule, like, they're only off a month, and then they
Yeah,
get
it's
back
tough.
at it again, and but you're 11. You should be playing with your friends, you should be going to parties, doing all the things, and not
Tricky.
necessarily, being stressed out
Yeah.
by playing travel ball.
It's so tricky. Because then what about the kids who are genuinely like, "These are my best friends, and I want to play," like but that it's there's no right or wrong, I feel like, which also makes it tricky, right? Is
Right.
like, every obviously, as you know too, like, every family, every situation is different, and I think that's what makes, again, this work so unique is there's not a one size fits all. Like, what I might say to one family about, right, how they navigate their kiddos' confidence might be completely different to what I say to the next because of what you're saying of like different aspects that go in and how your kiddo needs to be talked to or not talked to and what they're going through and in sport and out of sport. There's so much that goes into it that the culture just as sports, we just have never really talked about yet.
That makes sense.
Right?
Well, this has been lovely,
Yeah.
and we need to wrap it up. Tell us how we get in touch with you, and if I want you coaching my kid, what does that look like? All that
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. Thank you. I appreciate again you having me here. You can find me on Instagram at Reanna Karp underscore. It's ReannaKarp underscore, or my website at www.reannakarp.com. You can find my email on there as well. But yeah, feel free
Do you
to
have
call,
availability?
message. I do currently have availability for individuals and teams. I could take on probably two more teams right now, depending on what the needs are. But yeah, and individuals as well.
Okay, and is that only virtual or only in person or both or
Typically, I run virtually, but if there was a team that was able to commit for the season, it's something that I could do travel-wise as well.
okay, fantastic.
Yeah,
Well, thank you so
yeah.
much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I always have a great conversation with you.